Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 30th celebration, 57th anniversary of the Martin Luther King Jr. You are about to hear an amazing presentation that highlights women in support of Martin Luther King, featuring Reverend Lynn Name, Dr. Shane Session, and Sister Latoya and Believe January. Practice that. Facilitating mother, Dr. Joni E. Shaw. Dr. King did not intend to man yet years, not for the but before you thought she would be our facilitator. This wonderful historical event featuring the women.
First, what a blessing. Presence and presence. Before I introduce these amazing women, let's take a look. And another client at 15 is already used to it. We don't give them to that. So let's start. Just for a second. Because she how about that better? Okay, let's go. Let's bow. I say. And now to our Mrs. Coretta Scott King was born April 27, 1927 in Hyber to Obadiah Scott and Elise Laker Scott. Ms. Coretta Scott King graduated valedictorian from Lincoln Normal High School and entered Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio. She received a BA in Music and Education from Antioch. She also attended Boston School Conservatory of Music, where she earned a Bachelor of Music Education. Miss Ella Baker was born in 1903 in Norfolk, Virginia. She spent most of her childhood in rural North Carolina, listening to her grandparents tell stories about being enslaved. Miss Ella Baker's maternal grandparents bought, lived on, and cultivated land that was formerly a part of the plantation on which they were enslaved. Here, they bought the land for $250, which they paid off. This was a source of great profit for their family. Reverend Dr. Braden Hall had a life of integrated religion and politics. By her own accounts, she had a deep passion for justice and exercise. Dr. Hall was an ardent activist during the 60s civil rights movement, one of the founders of this theology. And I cut my teeth in seminary on her work. So at this time, when I was on the panel, let's start with our questions. Question one. How did you hear about Dr. King and what inspired you to get involved?
Since I'm his wife, I'll start by answering that question. I first heard of he was a doctor, he was Martin back then in 1952. It was my second semester at the Conservatory of Music in Boston. And I was in school with a young lady by the name of Mary Powell. And Mary and Martin were friends in Atlanta, where his father was the Ebony pastor of Ebenezer Church. And she became my friend in the Great Conservatory. But most of the students there were younger than her. She was just a little older than I was. But I liked Mary. She was intelligent and she was beautiful. So she became my friend. And one day, in the second semester of my freshman year, she came to me and said, "Have you ever heard of MLP?" That's what they call that. And I said, "No, I have no idea what that means." She said, "Well, he asked me if I knew any nice, intelligent, good-looking women in Boston, because he had been battling in dating relationships." So she offered him two names, and he told her, "Well, I've already dated that one, so give the number to the other one." And that was me. Well, I never heard of this man, but she told me he was at his dad's church, he was preaching all over Boston, and he was there at Boston University for a well, I wasn't interested, because he was a minister. If you know what minister, black minister was like that, and he was Baptist, or her, they didn't mean. And I was really looking for a church in Boston that was a little more liberal than even my AME church. So I thought I wanted to for the Baptist.
All right
But
now.
I gave her his number, and he called me, and we went on a date, and we talked for hours. And I was intrigued by him, even though he was short. And not really school. But from that day on, he continued to hold a relationship. And in the back of my mind, he told me on that first day that I would be his wife. Because he was looking for a woman with character, intelligence, personality, and beauty. I often wondered when he said that if I was ugly. That's the reality. But it took me a number of months to come to the conclusion that I would be his wife. Because we both were interested. It's a ministry vision lined up with mine. So in 1953, I began. This is Dr. Norman.
I met Martin King on the battlefield in 1962 in late summer. After four churches had been burned that were associated with the organization I worked for, the Student National Council, the Student National Coordinating Council, SNCC. We held a prayer vigil in Terrell County, Georgia, at the Mount Olive Baptist Church, one of the churches that had been burned. So at the ashes of that disaster, we held a prayer vigil where I prayed. And in my prayer, the refrain I used was, "I have a dream." After the service was over, Martin King came to me and he praised my prayer. And he asked me if he could use that refrain. That is when I first met him. After that, we had many conversations. We had many strategy conversations about the movement. He became a mentor
sure it became so. I feel like my research assistant didn't prepare me at all. Well, I'm here representing Ellen Jones, and quiet as it's kept, when Ellen Jones and Dr. King initially met, they didn't always see eye to eye, because you see, Miss Ellen Baker was an economist. She wasn't exactly looking to get involved in the civil rights movement. It wasn't exactly her jam. And I personally find, forgive me for not always standing in character of great people, but I tend to find that one of the things that makes leaders great is those who challenge and offer, opposition or opposing views on things, or not so easily swayed by initial argument. And as we ultimately learn that through great dialogue and debate, views manage to merge and common ground managed to erupt. And so it was not until Miss Ellen Baker found herself going to New York and getting entrenched in her own work that she became enamored with the work of Dr. King, and could then find her way to common ground academy, helping to support through her strengths, yes, but also through some of the more swaying points of view that align and overlap with the civil rights movement. That's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword. I'm going to say because of just that, Black and women, and quite interesting, still quite a double-edged sword in this day in 2026. One of the enormous challenges that passionate Black women, scholastic Black women face with this, because while we carried our movements, we still carried and reared our families. And that didn't stop. That not only happened during the civil rights movement, it continues to be the reality today. And in some ways, while that is a challenge, it is in trying to not do that, trying to separate that, that we find generation gaps in our fight forward. And I think we could all appreciate and understand that. I know it was true for me growing up, and likely true for most people in this room. What your parents were passionate about, you got dragged along. And by way of being dragged along, you came to hear and learn worldviews, not only of what was happening in your home, but it's kind of like what we used to call you sip sauce. You sip tea from the saucer of those who speak you sad. You understand? You kind of ear hustled your education into civil rights, or ear hustled your education even into adulthood, but your moral compass is shaped by that. Additionally, and my final point is, due to sexism and misogyny, again, still quite present today, just like racism today. The scholastics of women was not always readily and easily appreciated, and therefore the views and opinions often were sharpened, or using your term, the teeth get cut on having to have those internal battles before you even step onto the external battlefield. So if you kind of sort of think you have an idea, you're firmly rooted by the time you have to have those internal debates in the planning committee meetings. By the time the camera's rolling, you're really sure. You understand? So I would say right off, especially representing a woman whose her spirit was more in economic empowerment, for sure that posed that great challenge.
Well, I because I love Martin, but I became part of the movement because it was the right thing to do. And as his wife, from the day we got together, I told him, whatever you do, you will always have my back. So, let me make clear, in this day and age, you say, don't get it twisted. I was not unaware of the limits placed on me as a woman. There were moments where I had to have some restraint, but I was never dismissed. I was respected, but my role was an extension of my marriage. So I focused on my children. That was my biggest challenge, being a wife to Martin and raising these children. I was often with a child or had children when our house was bombed, when we were threatened and under constant surveillance. I handled all of that. The movement didn't stop when those things happened. It was my own private matter that I had to deal with. I had to deal with explaining to my children why some woman stabbed their dad. I had to explain to my children why daddy wasn't home or where he was when he was in prison. That was a challenge for me. I was educated, I was respected, but I was restrained. I put my motherhood first. I believe my experience as a woman doing this movement experience is not unique, but it was symbolic of the time. I was loyal to Martin, and I was loyal to the movement. I never felt ignored or invisible. I felt respected, but not in an authoritative way. I was an activist, a civil rights activist, but I was not considered a civil rights leader.
As a woman, I experienced the same institutional part of the movement that I did in other systems, which reinforced racism and sexism. I was treated as less credible, less feminine, and less protected and less valued. My organization, SNCC, different from many other civil rights organizations that included women, and that women held important positions. However, we were still not treated equal. Our SNCC's grassroots bottom-up model was influenced by my sister, Ella Baker, but still men received more media attention and the historical credits. When I was in seminary, I wrote a paper titled Converging Crisis. And in that paper, I argued that racism and sexism are not two separate forces acting independently. I argue that they shape each other. And the sexism looks different when filtered through racism. And racism looks different when filtered through sexism. They're interlocking oppressions. Black women don't experience racism the way Black men do, nor do they experience sexism the way white women do. Their experiences are qualitatively different and quantitatively heavier. So in sum, racism for the Black woman, what we face is not racism plus sexism, but racism times sexism. Thank you. What is
Well, my hope was in the people, but it was sustained by my faith. What gave me hope wasn't any single person or movement, but to those ordinary people, those ordinary women who organized, the families who marched together, the elders of the church who prayed for us. Those were the people who took the risk to stand when standing seemed at a cost. My faith is a constant reminder that we are here, and this movement is here not because of Martin, but because of hope that God has given us. I also have hope in my husband Martin, not because he was fearless or not fearful, but because of his faith to the movement. But above all, my faith came from our Almighty God. The psalmist says, my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but lean on Jesus. On Christ the solid rock I stand. No other ground is sinking sand. No other ground is sinking sand. And that is the hope that I stood on and I stand on. The root of my hope is my reality. My earliest and most enduring hope came from my father, the Reverend Berkeley M. Hall, who taught me freedom today, the belief that I was God's child and inherently worthy of dignity and liberation. My father's theology gave me a spiritual framework that made hope not optional but essential. I also gained hope from the courage of the people I serve, the ordinary Black Southerners who faced tremendous harm and threat to their livelihoods and their lives. The rural Black families who opened their homes to organizers from the North. The sharecroppers who readily grow despite threats to their lives. And the community members who attended mass events, even though they were being surveillance. Like I often say, the people that I serve were my teachers. Their courage confirmed that freedom was possible. I found hope from the solidarity of my SNCC people who worked alongside me. I was a part of a group known for grassroots, youth-driven, fearless organizing. SNCC gave me hope because I could feel the change in the air alongside the other Black activists. I trained in nonviolent direct action to peers who believed in transforming society. And I found a community that matched my passion, my discipline, my faith. SNCC's collective energy and their moral clarity reinforced my belief that the movement was sacred work. It was my calling. And I found hope from the nonviolent philosophy practice and the vision of hope. I believe that as we moved in our work, that we were moving in a way that God was calling us to. I'm thankful for all the influences that kept me moving forward and continue to have me and help me to hold on to hope.
All right.
I'm going to say the reason hope is the thing that has always been is our families. Particularly when I think about not just the women of the movement, but our grandparents. his grandparents that paved the way and knew the way. When it came to all movements, when it comes to freedom movements, I'm going to say that today's vote is the same as yesterday's vote. It was grandmother.
Yeah.
Whether you have praying grandmother, which we all typically did, whether you have grandmother that knew from her mother, set a little piece of change aside for that rainy day, which was always coming. Today, in this society, it's easy to just look out and your eyes gaze upon what would appear hopelessness. But typically, grandmothers have a special place in the hearts of grandchildren. And if not for our elders, if not for our grandmothers and our grandfathers, it will not matter what we know. It will not matter what we wish for. Without those grandparents, we lose touch with those grandbabies that grow up to seemingly become menaces to society or out of touch with the fight for freedom. But sometimes, most times, nobody can sit you down and tell you what to do. We've all had two things that typically we got from our grandmother. You got a good bruising on that backside. And they get that. And then you did get a good word. Your grandmother would sit you down when you were running, white iron hot. And couldn't nobody tell you nothing. You know, you just big enough, just grown enough. But you know what to tell you. But it's something about your grandmother's voice. I know my grandmother had a particular way that she called my name. And no matter how big and up you are, suddenly when she called you, right? She would sit you down. So if I had to say what would before, if I could say, I could talk to this beautiful mother, celebrate what would give her hope at a time like this, or such a time as this. Grandmothers are on the front line. When it comes to our young people getting skills, often overlooked. My grandfathers often taught young men how to be men, right? And that's some of the things that we lack today, we yearn for, right? Because we underestimated and overlooked the value of what has always given us time. They taught us what, they taught us what time it was, what was worth fighting for, right? So I'm gonna offer for you hope, the only hope we've ever had is our grandparents. Oh, yes. Listen, this is my intern. I tell everybody in the meeting, I got 18 month old intern. This is it's an urgent message.
I have no question. Okay, one more, last question. How do you envision? The question is, how do you envision the relevance of the freedom movement in the upcoming years? In these times? How is it relevant?
The relevance of the freedom movement, baby, what? In this current climate, the freedom movement should be getting a shot in the arm, an injection. Because everybody needs freedom movement now.
That's right.
What? This is a big time. I think like I was in so much. But are you kidding me? I'm thinking how the freedom movement becomes relevant today. A lot of communities realize you need freedom movement now, don't you? Yes, but the fact that black people been on, it's a whole lot of people realize that, oh, you qualify. Welcome. Welcome. You see it, I'm saying, it's a lot of young people that do what time it is. A lot of young people that don't look like a whole lot of us in this room realize, oh, as a matter of fact, black folks, y'all can sit this one out. Because now we realize there's a whole lot more communities that qualify for this trade, right?
Uh-oh, come on now.
So when it comes to freedom, when they express, we don't have to focus for that. We have to focus for yes, my daughter, you still want your postal service to work? Well, you want to go to the bank, make a wrong, down the phone, right where you grab your money? Welcome. Cheers. Welcome. Return back to your communities and let them know what the orientation is.
Part of my heart. Civil rights movement, freedom movement, LGBT, Black Lives Matter movement, women's movement, young people movement, all movements don't belong to the past. A moment is only alive if it continues to be present. Struggle for justice isn't contained to my era, her era, your era. That conviction shapes how I see, how I look at the future. Movement should remain relevant, not because injustice still exists, because injustice still exists, but it's always changing. It's much different than the injustices of my day, as it shows today. The relevant movement will depend on whether people understand justice must be renewed and not merely remembered.
Yes.
The movement must stay rooted in nonviolence, not as a tactic, but as a way of life. We are called to love our neighbors. The movement must remain rooted in that nonviolence, and it should also expand to a moral vision. All of those movements are part of morality. It touches everyone. Now, back in the 60s, we didn't realize that. But it's a human movement. The struggle for civil rights is part of a larger struggle for human moments that are continuing here today. So each generation must take up its own cross and lead the way. Freedom is never won, but it must be claimed and reclaimed by every generation. So in the next 5 years, the movement's relevance will depend on whether people choose fear over hate, the justice across cause, trust the voices of the young, and move forward with courage, even when the way seems uncertain. If they do, the movement will not only remain relevant, it will remain necessary.
All right.
So I believe the next 5 years, the freedom movement's relevance is going to continue to be ongoing, grassroots, expanding, spiritual ground, and transformative. It's going to be ongoing because freedom is unfinished. It's going to be grassroots because it's got to be powered by ordinary people. We all have to rise up and fight for one another. It's going to be expanded. It's already expanded to our brown brothers and sisters, our immigrant populations, our gender and intersectional justice. It's got to maintain its spiritual ground. It's got to be rooted in the freedom of faith that respects dignity of all and calls us all together.
And it's got to be transformed. It's got to reshape not just our churches where we become active in our faith, but also our public morality, where we all have to look at and care for one another. The vision for freedom is not short-term activism, but a long-term art of liberation.
There's all for free. Clap your hands. Clap your hands.
That we really appreciate your presence here today. All of the flags read the same. And the 57th M.L. King Jr. birthday celebration service of the Indiana Christian Leadership Conference presents this award to Joni Clark, and it will have everybody's name on it individually. As the facilitator, except yours will say as Mrs. President King, yours will say as Arabia Hall, and yours will say as Mrs. Ella Baker. Panel discussion on Monday, January 19th, 2026, at the historic St. John's Missionary Baptist Church, Indianapolis, Indiana. Reverend Dr. Thomas L. Brown, President, Reverend Marilyn Gill, Executive Director. Transition to our teacher program. If you are here and you want to take a little break, the ladies' restroom is located on this side, and the men's restroom is over here to the right. So we will be moving in just a few minutes for our mission program. Thank you so much